So, hey everybody, welcome to a Brilliant Businesses podcast. My name is Nick Bryant, and I'm very pleased to be back in the Loch Associates Group's offices today here in Tunbridge Wells, and I'm with Joe Milner. Hey Joe.
Hi Nick, nice to meet you.
Are you all right?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Good.
Looking forward to the bank holiday weekend.
Isn't it lovely? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. God save the Queen.
Exactly.
So Joe is an associate solicitor and solicitor advocate here at Loch Associates Group. But tell us how you fit in with all, Joe, how it all came about. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, of course. So I'd say I have been through quite an unconventional journey.
Yes.
Leaving school, I actually joined the Merchant Navy as a deck cadet. So followed my grandfather's steps. I joined a ship out in South America.
Okay.
Got out there and thought, do you know what, it's not quite what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And so I made the sort of conscious decision to say, actually, this isn't quite right. I'm going to leave now. Flew back all the way from South America.
Wow.
Got back to the UK. Got home and thought, what on earth am I going to do now? And so at that point, I was a apprenticeship here at Loch Associates.
Yeah.
And I was successful in applying for the role. So I started with Pam, that would have been 10 years ago.
Wow.
Started as an administrative apprentice.
Yeah.
Thought, do you know what, actually this law thing is quite good fun. I could see what the lawyers were doing. I thought, yeah, no, that's a bit of me. So I said to Pam, I'd like to go off and do my law degree, if that would be okay. Pam was very kind and said, yes, of course, go off and do your law degree, and why don't you volunteer with us during your summer holidays, continue to build up your experience. So I went off to do my law degree at Canterbury Christchurch University, so kept local so I could stay with the firm. Got my first class law degree, and then at that point I thought actually what I quite enjoyed doing is being on my feet, public speaking. I thought representing clients in court sounded quite exciting, so I decided to go off, train as a barrister first.
Wow.
So that was a year's course in London. The BPTC is what they call it. I got called to the bar in November 2018. And the pupillage market, which is the sort of like the training element of becoming a barrister, is very, very competitive. And Pam at that point said, well, would you like to stay with us? I said, yes, please. I really enjoy working for the firm. I like being local. I like working with local clients. And so, yes, I'd like to come back and train as a solicitor.
Okay.
And so therefore I decided I will practice as a solicitor, but I got my high rights as part of my training contract. And what that means is that I have the right to speak in any court in England and Wales. And what it does, it puts me in a position where I'm like for like of what I would have done at the bar.
Right.
And so I've come back into the business, and because my focus throughout my training has been around the area of business law and litigation, obviously, I've been working with Pam and driving that side of the business forward. Yeah. Whilst also obviously working with our employment lawyers as well, because there's quite a lot of overlap on the work we do.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been with Pam now for, I'd say, just over 10 years.
Yes.
Looking forward to many future years with her.
Yeah.
And driving that side of the business forward.
Yeah. So that 10-year period, you must have learnt a lot, not just working in the lawyers, but working in within this organisation. But business law, I mean, that's a big topic, isn't it? I mean, break that down for us a little bit if you can.
Huge topic. I mean, a business, it could sound very wide and actually quite dry, but it really isn't. I mean, it covers everything. You've got a business. You can understand that anything from, well, how do I first get up to starting up a business to, I've now got a business. How do I trade? What do I do? So, I mean, I suppose what does my day look like in terms of business law? Well, it could be advising clients on their startups as to, are they going to be a partnership? Maybe they're going to be a limited liability partnership or the traditional company setup. And what does that look like on either structure, and what is the best route for them? And once we've decided on what that business model is going to look like, looking at, well, what documents we need in place, how's the business going to run, how's it going to regulate itself, and ensuring those protections are in place for the business, but also for its own owners as well. And then, of course, you move into its day-to-day operations. How's it trading with its clients and customers, and what does that relationship look like? So looking at drafting terms and conditions. So, again, the client feels protected into engaging with the business, but also the business is, regulating itself and understands what its protections are in place to working with its clients. Yeah. And likewise with its suppliers. We all work with suppliers. We all get those horrible 40-page terms and conditions that loads and loads of words. What does it actually mean? So, if you're a new startup, there's a lot of financial risk for them. They want to make sure they're protected. So, sitting down with them, going through those lengthy, horrendous documents and actually explain, well, this is what this actually means, and maybe we can push back on something to try and get some
Okay.
more protection for you.
Yeah.
And then moving on to things like transactional work. So things have gone really, really well. Fantastic. What are we now going to do with the business? Are we going to try and sell it? So I'm working with a few clients at the moment on share sales. So it's going to be a complete takeover of the business. And also I've been working with a few clients on asset sales. So there's a particular area of the business that's got quite high value, and they're prepared to sell it off to a buyer.
Okay.
So I mean that's really the life of the company from its moment it's born right through to its trading. And some circumstances when things don't go right, working with our insolvency practitioners who we work with locally, to take the business through what that's going to mean for the owners, and also what it looks like for managing their clients and expectations there. And what I do find is that my business law area of practice does tie in a lot with my litigation work. So quite often I'm dealing with shareholder and director disputes, and really that comes from quite often friends or work colleagues going in to set up a new business. Things are great at the start, exciting, new venture. But of course, it doesn't always work out. And then what we're looking at is, well, how do we deal with this situation? How do we move forward?
Like it's a relationship, isn't it? And sometimes relationships don't work, and they have to be solved. So I guess so therefore the shareholders agreement is extremely important. Does that matter? I mean, does everyone need to have a shareholders agreement, no matter the size of the business? Or
so I mean, I would always advise it's worth considering. No matter what size, you could be 2 shareholders, you could be 15. The point of the shareholders agreement, well, what is it? The document itself is very different from what we call the Articles of Association. So a company will have its articles which regulate how it as a business operates day to day. But what the shareholder agreement does is look at, the relationship between you and your fellow shareholders, and creates that relationship, that contractual relationship between you. And so, you can imagine even if there's only 2 of you, it may be you both own 50% of the business. What quite often happens, and maybe I'll give an example in a moment, is you end up in deadlock because one of you wants to go one way and one of you wants to go the other way. And if you don't have a document in place to say, well, you're in theoretically dispute, you can't decide what to do, what happens? So I mean, maybe what I'll do, I'll give you 2 examples I'm working on at the moment. So one client, they were 2 friends who'd been friends throughout the school life, had left, set up a recruitment business. Doing very, very well for the last, been going for now for just over 3 years. Started off with a very clear vision that this is where they're going to drive the business forward. This is what they want it to look like. And of course, as things develop, things change in life. One of the shareholders has got a slightly different view on where he sees the business driving forward compared to the other one. Now, fortunately, they do have a shareholders agreement in place. They came to us right at the start when they wanted to set up. And I had that conversation, as you say, it's like 2 of us. We don't need a shareholders agreement. Thinking ahead, well, maybe you don't at this point, but there could always be that risk in the future. You may want to have different decision-making powers, or something may not go right. And now where we are, where things have started to fall apart, what that document has, it has deadlock provisions in there. So it says you can't agree what you want to do on this decision-making point. How do we resolve that? Because you can't outvote each other. So the clause in that particular agreement says, well, first we're going to go to a mediation. So a neutral ground. Let's have a third party, help facilitate us try and resolve this dispute, this deadlock we've got. And very thankfully for them, they've gone into that with open minds. The mediator has managed to help them think about, well, how do we move forward? Is this something you want to continue? The one who has a very different view now from what the business started out as, do you really want to continue? Or maybe it's something you want to look at moving on. And the outcome of that, what has been the outcome, is that he is going to move on to do what he wants to do. And we've managed to come up with a suitable arrangement where he can leave and take some value from the business to facilitate him starting. And I suspect what will happen in the future, they will probably join up again, maybe in 3 or 4 years' time, to once they're both in the same place, to be able to move forward. Now compare that to my other story, much more horrendous. So that is a chap who's been brought into a business as a sort of buyout mechanism. So 2 previous shareholders looking at an exit strategy so they could retire. He's been brought in to put some investment into the business, and the idea is over 3 or 4 years he would essentially buy them out, and they would leave, and he'd become the full owner. gentleman's agreement.
Okay.
I would say it's a construction industry, so quite a lot of things are on handshakes, and most of the time it will go right, but there's always that one time it will go wrong, and this is one of them. So at the moment he only owns 10% of the business, and the idea is he'd get up to that full ownership over the next 3 to 5 years. So at the current time, he's only a small shareholder in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't give him a lot of protection. Didn't think it's sensible to put a shareholders agreement at the time. Didn't want the cost. Wanted to focus on getting the business rolling forward. And he's done a fantastic job of that.
Yeah.
But of course, the business now has got a lot of value in it.
Right.
It did. And so, of course, the other shareholders maybe starting to feel a bit greedy and have decided just to push him out of the business. Essentially removed him from the board of directors. So my client no longer has any control over his decision making and what we're going to be doing day to day. But he's also stuck with shares, 10% shares, which don't give him any rights per se in terms of making decisions in the business. But also there's no mechanism to say, well, you've got to buy my shares back because you've actually kicked me out.
Yeah.
So he's been stuck with this 10% with no dividends being declared, no income coming from it. And this has been a dispute going on for a couple of years because we don't really have a contractual document to guide us into how we resolve this situation.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for him, what has now happened is the business has essentially been stripped, and it's going to be going into administration, which under the shareholders agreement, theoretically, there are legality issues around it, but theoretically, the other shareholders can do.
Right.
So in that situation, a simple document, it could have been very straightforward, put in place, would have meant that at that point he was pushed out. He could have sold his shares to the other shareholders, got his value back, and moved on to a new venture. So, of course, we get clients talking about 15, 20-page document. I'm talking about dragon-on provisions or dividend policies. Very dry, sounds horrendous. We don't really want to touch that. But actually, it's quite a make-it-or-break-it document. And a lot of the disputes that I end up dealing with clients. And one thing I will say is that what always happens after we've resolved these disputes is that going forward, the first thing they always ask is, where's my shareholders agreement? Yeah. So as you can see, really, really important document.
Yeah, it's two sort of opposites there, isn't there? One, why you should, and one, what can happen if you don't.
Exactly.
Great examples there. Just going back to what you said earlier about you went to train as a barrister at the beginning and then back to becoming a solicitor. Does that mean you can offer your clients a little bit more or a little bit different to just I'd say a normal solicitor, but you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. So I mean, I suppose explain what's the difference.
Yeah.
So barristers traditionally are dealing with all litigation advocacy work. So they're the people quite often are pictured with wigs and gowns on in the courtroom before a judge, making legal arguments and putting your client's case for you.
Yeah.
As solicitors are very much in the sort of beginning of the work, preparation for court, drafting documents, as well as doing with sort of non-contentious work. So, drafting employment contracts or drafting share purchase agreements where there's no dispute.
Yeah.
Non-contentious work. So in this country, there is that divide between those who go off to be barristers and do the advocacy work and those who decide to work in solicitor firms and do non-contentious or just conduct the litigation and not being on their feet.
Right.
Now, the difference I've got is I spread across the both because, as I said before, with my higher rights, I can theoretically do what a barrister does and I can theoretically do what the solicitor does. And what that means for my clients is that when I start with a case, quite often I will see it right through to the end, including representing them in court.
Yeah.
And, court is a scary place. It's very unfamiliar for most people. I mean, most people don't want to end up in there. It's costly, scary. You've got no certainty of the outcome. But by me being able to sort of be with them from the very, very early days to that point we're sat before a high court judge or a district judge in the county court, there's that sort of consistency, that certainty, some security. They feel, actually, I feel quite comfortable to be here with Joe.
It's one relationship rather than two, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And obviously for us, it means we've got a bit more control on how that case is going to be presented. I've worked on it from day one, so I know the intricacies of that case. And so also it has a massive cost saving for the client too, because the preparation work I've already done getting it to trial. So when I get to that point before I'm before a judge, I'm ready to go, I'm on my feet. But don't get me wrong, there are still cases where there is most certainly the appropriateness to have a barrister on board.
Yeah.
As I say, their day-to-day work is sitting in the courts and tribunals representing clients. So, there is still a need for them. And, I will always say, actually, this sort of case, look, we're in an 8-10 day hearing. It's probably better, actually, we get a barrister involved, but I will come and support.
Okay.
And sometimes work with a barrister on doing the advocacy too.
Yeah.
I'm slightly different in that regard, I suppose, that I'm more naturally focused on being on my feet in court for clients. And we had a recent success story. Issued a claim for a client. The other side decided they weren't going to defend it. And what that does, it enables us to apply for what we say is default judgment. In other words, you're not saying you dispute it, therefore surely we must succeed.
Okay.
Judge, very, very good on the day, said, yes, of course, default judgment, there's no defence. We find in your favour.
Yeah.
So got the client the judgment and got them their costs awarded as well. So that was a morning in court before a judge and taking them through all the procedural, horrible sort of legal rules.
Yes.
But fundamentally, again, the judge would say, look, he didn't submit his defence. Can we have judgment, please?
Okay.
And again, giving it out to a barrister, they would have to read into the case, prepare for it, additional cost to my client. And actually, something like that, it's very easy for me to just go up to the court and deal with it because I know I've been there from the start.
Yeah. Is that quite unique? Are there others like you that had that joint thing, or is it just?
It is quite unique. I think at the moment I don't have the numbers to hand, but I think there's only 4 or 5% of solicitors hold higher rights. So it's quite a small proportion. It's, I'd say, less common because a lot of bigger practices like to push cases out to barristers.
Right. Yeah.
That's their world.
Yeah.
We'll get it ready, but we give it to them and let them move on. So I'd say it's more traditional in the family courts. A lot of solicitors do their higher rights because most solicitors are doing the advocacy for their clients because they are much more fragile and need that care.
Yeah.
But I think there is a trend moving forward of in-house advocates becoming more common. There's a lot more firms who are starting to think, actually, why aren't we doing the advocacy? We know our clients. We have that relationship with the client. We provide them all these other services. Why don't we provide that? So I think it will become a trend.
Yes.
But certainly at the moment it's niche, and I think that's something I can offer, not just for our clients, but also locally with different firms, different solicitor firms, working with them to say, actually, we've got this case. Joe, could you just go up to the court and do it for us rather than giving it to someone in London at a much higher cost?
Yeah.
And, so it's very, very different from perhaps other work that solicitors do.
Yeah, it makes you and also Loch Associates, a good firm to choose, really, isn't it? It's really good.
Definitely.
Just moving on to another topic, which I know is quite popular at the moment, which is workplace immigration, especially with the Ukrainian war, with people coming over and working here. Tell me a little bit about the ins and outs of that and how you can get involved and help people. Yeah,
of course. So, I mean, as you say, it's been quite a key area recently with the Ukrainian war, and really has been a reason why we've decided as a business to drive this particular area of law forward. Yeah. So, I mean, predominantly recently it's been dealing with the Ukrainian scheme. So, the Homes to Ukraine has been the main one. So clients come to say that we've got a few of our staff who've got houses, spare bedrooms they'd like to go through and put that assistance in place. So we've sort of discussed the pros, and of course there are some cons with it as well, and then assisting them with going through that process and what they need to do in terms of getting that in place. And then on the other side, there's also been the employment aspect. So looking at the skilled worker route, which I'd say has probably been the main area that I've focused on. And that's always been a visa route available for migrant workers here in the UK. Yeah. And what that involves is me assisting the client in getting a sponsorship license. So essentially it's a ticket, a number that enables you as a business to then employ migrant workers. Okay. As most sort of government applications are, lengthy, a lot of red tape. We've got to go through a lot of document preparation. So taking them through that, and once that is approved, they've then got the options of the skilled worker route or other available routes that are coming into place. Yeah. Which for Ukrainians means if they have Ukrainian staff or want to employ Ukrainian employees, we can get them over to the UK. But also enables them for other migrant workers in the future, wanting to employ. Now we're out of the EU, German, French, Portuguese, Spanish employees. Yeah. Actually, you need that sponsorship license in place now to be able to bring them across to UK to work. Okay. Focusing mainly on workplace immigration, getting those sponsorship licenses in place, getting through applications, and then once the migrant workers here in the UK, our team of HR consultants and HR Advise Me are trained up to understand the UK visa and immigration policies, what needs to be put in place, and how we manage migrant workers to ensure that the client's license isn't tarnished. Yeah. So that ongoing support can be provided too. Excellent.
Yeah, I remember Pam saying earlier about you're also your human resources department here, so it's a really good overflow of work, sort of that can help you with these things. Thanks, Joe. That's a great insight in what you do here, and especially with business law, and obviously crossover to employment law, isn't there?
Definitely.
We're on June the 1st, and we've got 2 days off, haven't we? The next 2 days, so we're all looking forward to a bit of a break.
Very much.
Thanks for joining us today, Joe.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick.
Really good to see you. All Joe's details actually, and Loch Associates details, are on this podcast at the bottom and on the Brilliant Businesses website. So if you need any advice from Joe or the team here, please do get in touch. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe, and we'll see you for another podcast soon. Thank you very much.